Know that even after they walk away, a narcissist can't truly stop thinking about you? You might think they're gone, but their mind is still trapped in the web you shared. You've left, you've moved on. But somewhere deep inside, they're replaying every interaction, every compliment, every fight. And that's what keeps them tethered to you, even when they don't admit it. If this resonates with you, hit like and follow, because understanding this is the first step to reclaiming your peace. Let's dive deeper into why this happens and what it really means for you. Narcissists form deep emotional attachments, but these attachments are very different from the bonds most people experience in healthy relationships. While we often connect with others through mutual care, trust, and shared vulnerability, a narcissist's attachment is rooted in control and the need for validation. From the very beginning, they are drawn to people who can feed their ego, affirm their self-image, or serve as a mirror for the identity they want to project. This attachment is less about who you are as a person and more about the function you serve in maintaining their sense of importance. When you first engage with a narcissist, they may idealize you, seeing in you qualities that reflect their desires, dreams, or ambitions. This idealization creates an intense emotional pull, not because of genuine intimacy, but because it satisfies a deep psychological need for affirmation. Over time, even as the relationship becomes more conflictual or painful, the initial attachment doesn't disappear. It persists because the narcissist's mind has entwined their sense of worth with the way you interact with them. When you are present, you feed their ego. When you withdraw, a vacuum is created that they find almost impossible to ignore. The attachment is reinforced by intermittent reinforcement, the mix of affection, approval, and occasional criticism or neglect, which mirrors patterns seen in behavioral psychology that make bonds exceptionally hard to break. Unlike healthy attachments, which can gradually fade when a relationship ends, the narcissist's bond lingers. Their emotional brain continues to replay memories, interactions, and imagined scenarios in an effort to regain that sense of control or to resolve the tension caused by the attachment. This is why even after a breakup or distance, a narcissist may remain fixated on the person they left behind. It is not love in the traditional sense, but an intense preoccupation with what was, combined with a fear of losing access to the source of ego reinforcement. The depth of their attachment is ultimately a reflection of their own unmet emotional needs, insecurities, and reliance on external validation, which keeps the connection alive in ways that are confusing, persistent, and often misunderstood by those who experienced it firsthand. The bond a narcissist feels towards someone is fueled not by love or genuine care, but by the constant validation and admiration they receive from that person. For them, relationships function as a mirror reflecting back the sense of self they desperately want to believe is flawless, powerful, and worthy. Every compliment, act of kindness, or sign of attention becomes a reinforcement of their self-image, and the person providing it becomes an essential part of maintaining that fragile identity. This means that even after leaving or ending a relationship, the narcissist's mind continues to associate the other person with the emotional fuel they once relied upon. Unlike healthy attachments, which can fade when the relationship ends, this bond is psychologically sticky. It persists because the narcissist's brain links the person to a constant source of ego satisfaction, and the absence of this reinforcement creates a mental tension they are uncomfortable ignoring. They might not consciously acknowledge it, but internally they replay memories of the attention, admiration, or compliance they once received, and they imagine ways to regain that sense of control or validation. This is why distance, silence, or moving on by the other person often intensifies their thoughts. They are confronted with the reality that the supply is no longer available, triggering an internal struggle that keeps the attachment alive. The bond is also strengthened by a combination of idealization and devaluation that occurred during the relationship. When a narcissist initially idealizes someone, they place that person on a pedestal, creating a psychological imprint that lingers even after the pedestal is toppled by conflict, criticism, or withdrawal. The contrast between what they once had and what is now missing generates a sense of loss that is disproportionate, not because of love, but because the narcissist is mourning the absence of ego reinforcement. Their attachment is thus not truly about the other person, but about what that person represents to their fragile sense of self. It is this ongoing need for validation and inability to emotionally self-regulate that makes them unable to let go fully, even when the relationship has ended and rationally they might insist they have moved on. When a narcissist leaves a relationship, the emotional bond they formed does not simply vanish. In fact, leaving often intensifies their preoccupation with the person they walked away from, rather than providing relief or closure. This is because the attachment they formed was never grounded in mutual love or partnership, but in a psychological dependence on validation, admiration, and control. The person they leave behind represents a source of emotional supply that their ego has come to rely on, and the sudden absence of this supply creates a void they cannot easily fill. Even if the narcissist believes they are free from the relationship, their mind unconsciously ruminates over interactions, memories, and imagined scenarios, trying to maintain a sense of connection that no longer exists in reality. This preoccupation is compounded by cognitive dissonance. They may rationalize the breakup as a triumph, as liberation, or as a necessary decision, but emotionally, they are confronted with the stark reality of loss. Unlike most people who might gradually detach after a breakup, narcissists often experience a paradoxical pull. They want distance from accountability, from emotional responsibility, or from the discomfort of being vulnerable, yet they are unable to release the person from their mental and emotional sphere. This is why some narcissists engage in subtle monitoring, fantasize about reunions, or even attempt intermittent contact long after leaving. Their attachment is not based on reciprocity, but on the imprint of the role you played in their life and the ego reinforcement you provided. Even negative interactions, arguments, conflict, or criticism can strengthen the attachment because they keep the other person mentally present, fueling obsessive thought patterns. The bond persists because narcissists struggle to regulate emotions internally. They externalize their needs, and the absence of the other person forces them to confront feelings they are ill-equipped to manage. In this way, leaving does not erase the bond. It highlights it, exposing the depth of dependency the narcissist unknowingly developed. Their inability to truly detach is a reflection of their own unmet emotional needs, insecurities, and reliance on external validation, which keeps the connection alive long after they have physically walked away. Narcissists experience a constant internal tug-of-war between their desire for freedom and their inability to emotionally detach, a phenomenon known as cognitive dissonance. On one hand, they crave independence. They want to avoid responsibility, maintain their self-image of invulnerability, and assert control over their choices. On the other hand, the emotional bond they formed with someone, even if it was toxic or manipulative, continues to hold them tightly. This creates a psychological conflict. Part of them insists that they are done, that the person is no longer relevant, and that they have moved on, while another part remains entangled in memories, imagined scenarios, and lingering feelings they do not fully understand. The disconnect between their rational mind, which claims freedom, and their emotional brain, which clings to attachment, produces a persistent mental tension. Unlike most people who gradually release attachments after a breakup or distance, narcissists often struggle to reconcile these conflicting states. They may attempt to distract themselves, rationalize their behavior, or even seek new sources of validation. Yet the unresolved attachment continually resurfaces. This tension is exacerbated by the fact that the narcissist's self-esteem is largely dependent on external reinforcement. When the person they were attached to is gone, a void forms in their emotional and psychological landscape, forcing them to confront the absence of the supply they once relied on. Silence, withdrawal, or lack of contact only amplifies the internal dissonance because the gap reminds them of what they have lost while simultaneously challenging their narrative of independence. Even negative interactions, arguments, conflicts, or rejection cannot fully sever this bond, as the attachment is maintained by the emotional imprint of their earlier experience.